Behind every legend on that screen was a real human being carrying pain the cameras never captured. I'm David, and today we go behind the Magnificent Seven, 8 performers, 66 years, and the untold truth about the men who made it magnificent. Stay till the end, because I'll reveal how this classic Western became much bigger than just one movie, and why its legacy is still alive today. Hit subscribe right now. You do not want to miss this. Chris Adams, Yul Brynner. Yul Brynner, born Yuli Borisovich. Brynner on July 11, 1920, in Vladivostok, Russia, played Chris Adams, the black-clad, morally unshakable leader of the Seven, a character so commanding that Brynner was the look, having personally chosen every element of his appearance himself. His 1956 portrayal of the King of Siam and the King and I had won him the Academy Award for Best Actor, making him one of the few actors who came to a project not chasing fame, but building a legacy. He did not just act in The Magnificent Seven, he created it, personally optioning the rights to Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, and fighting studio resistance for years to get it made. On set, he reportedly counted Steve McQueen's close-ups frame by frame and demanded equal screen time. A tension that director John Sturges later admitted made the film electric in ways no script could have manufactured. His life after the film became a revolving door of 4 marriages and over 4,500 stage performances of The King and I on Broadway. But the cigarettes that were part of his screen identity became his executioner, and in 1985 he was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, recording an anti-smoking public service announcement that aired on American television the day after his death on October 10, 1985 at age 65. The king who looked invincible used his last breath not for applause but to save strangers he would never meet.
Men in this line of work are not all alike. Some care about nothing but money.
Vin, Steve McQueen. Terrence Stephen McQueen, born March 24, 1930, in Beech Grove, Indiana, played Vin, the drifting, restless gunslinger who joins for money but stays for something he cannot name. Because McQueen was a man whose father abandoned him before birth and whose mother sent him to a reform school at age 14, where he later said he learned more about survival than any acting class ever could. He came to The Magnificent Seven as a relatively unknown television actor from Wanted Dead or Alive, desperately needing money and a platform, beginning a calculated war for screen dominance from day one, adjusting his hat, repositioning himself so the camera could not ignore him. So effectively that Yul Brynner reportedly began counting close-ups to stop McQueen from stealing the film entirely. By the late 1960s, he was the highest-paid actor in Hollywood, earning over $12 million per film, starring in The Great Escape, Bullet, and The Thomas Crown Affair. But behind that golden run was a man consuming himself with alcohol, drugs, and a reckless obsession with speed that 3 marriages could not survive. He quietly received a diagnosis of malignant mesothelioma, linked to asbestos exposure from his Marine service and film sets, dying on November 7, 1980, at only 50 years old. A man who made freedom look effortless on screen while privately running from wounds he never fully named.
I take a job in a grocery store. Fella says I'm gonna make a crackerjack clerk.
Bernardo O'Reilly, Charles Bronson. Charles Dennis Bukinski, born November 3, 1921, in Ehrenfeld, Pennsylvania, played Bernardo O'Reilly, a gunfighter so fallen from greatness that he is shoveling manure for spare change when the Seven find him. And Bronson lived a version of that humiliation himself, growing up as the 11th of 15 children in a family so poor he once wore his sister's dress to school, going into the Pennsylvania coal mines at age 16 to survive. He changed his name from Bukinski to Bronson during McCarthyism because Slavic names were viewed with suspicion in Hollywood, and came to this film not as a star, but as a journeyman actor. Which may be exactly why his scene where the village children bring him food has been called one of the most quietly devastating moments in the film for 66 years. That quiet intensity powered a career that took off outside America first, making him the #1 box office star in Europe and Japan throughout the late 1960s, before America caught up with Death Wish in 1974. His second wife, Jill Ireland, died of breast cancer in 1990 after a decade-long battle he supported with fierce devotion. and after her death, he was never quite the same. Dying on August 30, 2003, at age 81, from pneumonia complicated by Alzheimer's disease, the man who looked like a threat in every frame was, in private life, one of the most loyal and gentle souls the industry ever produced.
It's my real name. Mexican on one side, Irish on the other, and me in the middle.
Charles Bronson looked like the most dangerous man in any room, but the people who knew him said he was the gentlest. Does that change the way you see him on screen? BRITT, James Coburn. James Harrison Coburn III, born August 31, 1928, in Laurel, Nebraska, played BRITT, a character with perhaps 4 minutes of total screen time and fewer than 20 spoken lines, who still ranks among the most memorable in the film. Because Coburn understood that stillness, precision, and the right silence can say more than a monologue ever could. He discovered theater at Los Angeles City College, trained seriously through the 1950s, and arrived at the Magnificent Seven as a relatively unknown character actor whose face, once seen, was impossible to forget. The long jaw, the sharp eyes, the grin that suggested he already knew how the fight would end. The knife-throwing scene introducing BRITT was shot in a single take, according to production records, launching him toward a career that included Our Man Flint in 1966 and an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in 1999 for Affliction, nearly 4 decades after his most iconic role. He suffered from severe rheumatoid arthritis for years, a condition so debilitating it threatened to end his career entirely before finding relief through alternative treatment in the 1990s. Dying on November 18, 2002, at age 74 from a heart attack, the man who said the least on screen left the loudest impression, fighting serious illness privately and quietly, just like BRITT fought everything without making a sound.
Greatest shot I've ever seen.
Worst. Was aiming at the horse.
Lee Robert Vaughn. Robert Francis Vaughn, born November 22, 1932, in New York City, played Lee, a once legendary gunfighter paralyzed by fear, haunted by the men he has killed. And Vaughn brought an intellectual precision to that role that set it apart, partly because he held a PhD in communications from the University of Southern California, making him a genuine rarity in an industry not known for intellectual depth. He was drawn to Lee because the character's psychological complexity offered something most Westerns refused to give, a hero who was visibly, admittedly broken. And on set, he prepared deeply, bringing a quiet authority that translated directly into Lee's haunted stillness on screen. After the film, he became an international household name through The Man from U.N.C.L.E., 1964 to 1968, while also actively opposing the Vietnam War, testifying before Congress and working in Robert F. Kennedy's 1968 presidential campaign. He accumulated more than 200 film and television credits across 6 decades before dying on November 11, 2016, at age 83, from acute leukemia, a man who played broken, fearful men on screen while living one of the most intellectually fearless and publicly committed lives in Hollywood history.
Insult swallowed. None. Enemies.
Harry Luck, Brad Dexter. Brad Dexter, born April 9, 1917, in Goldfield, Nevada, as Boris Michael Rosenberg, played Harry Luck, the only one of the 7 driven by greed rather than honor. And there is painful irony in the fact that Dexter himself became the most forgotten face from one of cinema's most celebrated casts. He served in World War II, built a respectable career through the 1940s and 1950s, and arrived at the Magnificent Seven with his biggest platform, one that never translated into the stardom his castmates achieved despite the film's enormous success. What Hollywood circles remember him for has almost nothing to do with acting. In 1964, he dove into the waters off Kauai, Hawaii, and saved Frank Sinatra from drowning in a dangerous current, an act of genuine heroism confirmed publicly by Sinatra's circle. And yet, even that extraordinary moment eventually faded from public memory. He stepped away from acting entirely and moved into film production through the 1970s, dying on December 12, 2002, at age 85, from emphysema. A man brave enough to save a legend from drowning was somehow the one history kept trying to forget. Brad Dexter saved Frank Sinatra's life, and the world almost forgot him. Does someone that brave deserve more than a footnote in history? Drop your thoughts below.
All right. All that's on top. What's underneath? Only what I told you.
CHICO HORST BUCHHOLZ. Horst Werner Buchholz, born December 4, 1933 in Berlin, Germany, played CHICO, the youngest and most impulsive of the seven, burning with something to prove. And Buchholz brought an energy so raw that it frequently threatened to overtake entire scenes, which director John Sturges understood was exactly what CHICO needed to be, uncontained and alive in a way the older gunmen no longer were. He survived the Second World War as a child in a city bombed into rubble, channeling that hunger into a career that made him one of Europe's biggest film stars before age 25. His performance in The Confessions of Felix Krull in 1957 made him a continent-wide sensation and brought him directly to Hollywood's attention. On set, he was the outsider in every sense, a German actor in an American Western, the youngest among veterans, speaking English as a second language. And that genuine outsider energy made CHICO's journey from reckless boy to someone choosing roots feel completely real. He married actress Miriam Brew in 1958 and remained with her until his death, one of the most stable marriages in a cast not known for romantic stability. Dying on March 3, 2003, at age 69, from pneumonia in Berlin, the same city that had burned around him as a boy. The man who played someone desperate to prove himself had already proven everything before the cameras ever rolled.
He makes me look like 2 cents with some damn kids game. Hey,
CALVERA, Eli Wallach. Eli Herschel Wallach, born December 7, 1915, in Brooklyn, New York, played CALVERA, the bandit leader whose menace and dark humor make him one of the most compelling antagonists in Western cinema history. And Wallach made CALVERA understandable, not sympathetic, but human, a man who saw himself as simply surviving by the same rules everyone else used, just more honestly. He was a founding member of the Actors Studio in 1947 alongside Marlon Brando and Elia Kazan, and arrived at the Magnificent Seven already holding a Tony Award for his 1951 Broadway debut in The Rose Tattoo. Meaning Hollywood had been slow to recognize what the theater world had known for years. On set, he was warm and famously professional, amid the ego battles swirling around him. And he has spoken about nearly dying during filming, when the steps of a passing train almost decapitated him while lying on the tracks for a scene, a moment he later recalled with characteristic humor. He continued working into his 90s, received an Honorary Academy Award in 2010 at age 94, and outlived every single castmate before dying on June 24, 2014, at age 98. The man who played the most feared villain in the film was, by every account, the kindest and most joyful human being on the entire set. The monster on screen was the gentleman off it.
All 40 of us, by these 3. Or is it?
The legacy that never died. The Magnificent Seven became one of the most famous Westerns ever, because it created a team-style story that later inspired many action movies. The idea was simple but powerful. Different men with different skills come together for one dangerous mission. That formula is still used in modern films about soldiers, fighters, heroes, and rescue teams. One film, 66 years of a legacy that refuses to die, and behind every single frame was a human being carrying wounds, battles, and sacrifices that the audience never saw but always felt. Now you know what it truly cost them. If this brought the film closer to you, hit subscribe because there is always another legend waiting to be uncovered.